In my first HX Stomp video, where I compare it to my Matchless C-30, I talk about why I picked up an HX Stomp and why it was a good option for me. The ability to use it as a direct solution, but also use it as a multi-effects unit was a huge win for me. And over time, it's continued to be that. One thing I also mentioned in that video is that I chose it over getting something like a Kemper, which I'd had some experience with. The Kemper obviously cost a lot more, and the flexibility of the HX Stomp and the cost, that's almost a third, I believe, was a big draw for me. But every experience I've ever had with a Kemper has been great. They sound fantastic. So I recently borrowed one. I have one here in my home studio right now, and I thought I'd do a video comparing them. Now, rather than just compare the Kemper to the HX Stomp head to head, I thought I'd take it one more step, and we're actually going to compare my Matchless to the Kemper to the HX Stomp. Now, the way that I set this up is a little involved, and I'm not going to get into all the details and ins and outs of it. But basically what I did is I set up the amp, ran it into a cabinet, mic'd that up with a 57 and a Royer 121. Then I made a Kemper profile of that sound. Then I made a speaker IR or a cab IR from that setup as well, and I've loaded that up into the HX Stomp. So for all intents and purposes, we're kind of as close as we can get, right? Each thing is in their natural element. The guitar amp is run through a cabinet, is mic'd up with a pretty classic combination of mics. The Kemper will be running direct, and the HX Stomp will be running direct with the IR from that cab. This should put them all in the same ballpark, and should be a good way to compare them. Now, I'm also not going to play a whole lot in this video and switch between them all back and forth. I just want to let you guys hear a little bit of each one, get a taste of how close they are or how different they are, and then I want to tell you guys kind of my experience with it and what I'm kind of feeling and hearing as I play through them. Also, stick around to the end of the video because I've got a surprise for you guys. All right, let's get into it. All right, so what'd you guys think? Sorry there's not more, comparison playing, but I think it gives you an idea of where they all sit. So now let's talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of all of them and kind of how they stand up to each other. So first, obviously the amp, to me, sounds amazing. Every time I mic it up and I record it, I'm always impressed, and it always sounds just great, feels great. Now, the bad thing, at least right now with this amp, is I do feel like it's got some capacitors that are going. This amp is getting close to 30 years old. I'm hearing some kind of weird noises come out of it from time to time. Just stereotypical tube amp problems, aging tube amp problems, right? So that's not awesome. I'm going to have it worked on at some point. Obviously, I always have to replace the tubes and all of that. That's just part of owning a tube amp. But that being said, it sounds amazing. It feels amazing. Lots of great tones that I can get out of this amp. It's always delivered. And honestly, it's never broken down on me on a gig or anything like that. This is one of the first issues I've ever had with it. And it's really subtle. I'm not sure if that's what's going on or not, but it seems like it's about time. Now, the HX Stomp, I've done comparisons of it and amps before. You guys know that I think it's a great value. It's super versatile. And it sounds good. It gets the job done really, really well. For me, at the price point that the HX Stomp is, I think it's one of the best values on the guitar market right now. As far as everything that they pack into a small package, that, you can use it as an interface. You can use it as a direct, a live solution direct. You can plug headphones into it. Tons of great effects, tons of great amps. Spanning the gamut of vintage to modern. Such a great value in the HX Stomp. And it sounds great, which is the most important thing, right? So now the Kemper. This is one of the first chances I've gotten to really set up an amp and profile it and tweak those profiles and get them dialed in. And I do have to say, it's pretty impressive. It's not exactly the same. I feel like when I A/B the amp and the Kemper side by side, there's slight difference, but the Kemper has something to it. It's hard to explain. It just sounds full and warm, but there's still plenty of brightness as well, but it sounds great. Now, that being said, I don't love the just the form factor. It's harder to make adjustments, and the biggest thing that I think that I didn't realize for a long time, and probably some people don't realize, is the difference between a Kemper and an HX Stomp or the Line 6 stuff, the Helix as well. And that's when you tweak the EQ on the Kemper, it's kind of after the fact, right? Like the profile is kind of the sound of the amp at a certain setting baked in. Whereas one thing that's super cool about the HX Stomp or the Helix is that when you make adjustments, the way that they've modeled the amps, it's actually adjusting. It's more like adjusting an amp. It's closer to that. So with the Kemper, you've got to have multiple profiles of the same amp and different EQ settings and all of that if you really want to capture that character of an amp. I think if I were really doing the Kemper thing full out, I would probably have settings for my Les Paul, and I would have settings or profiles, I guess is a better word to use, for my Strat. I would have to make all these different profiles for my different guitars so that they were reacting the same way as an amp would. The nice thing about the HX Stomp is that you can go in and change those things, and it's more like an amp. It's tweaking the EQ and how the treble is running into the gain circuits and all of these different intricacies, and just the minutia of tube amps and tweaking them to get them to sound good. The fact that Line 6 kind of captures that in the models is super cool to me and ultimately makes for a much more versatile product. Now, I know I sound like a huge Line 6 fanboy. I am a fan of their products. They're not paying me to say any of this. They're not, doing anything. They don't even know I'm making this video. So, I really think that they make an amazing product. I also think the Kemper is amazing as well. It sounds fantastic. The ability to profile my amps and get some really great sounds out of it is super cool. And it's really inspiring to play. When I first got it and I plugged in and pulled up some of the profiles that were on there, I pulled up some Michael Britt profiles that I've used a lot, and some that I haven't. I also used some Brian Carl profiles. They all sounded great, and they're all really inspiring to play immediately. I don't always find that to be the case with the HX Stomp or the Helix. You have to dial in some of the settings for your guitar, and you have to kind of learn the ins and outs of how to get it to sound great with your rig. All in all, there's no loser here. They all sound great, whether you're using a tube amp, a Kemper, or the HX Stomp. For me, the HX Stomp provides a ton of value and sounds great. I do think there's a little something extra that the Kemper provides tonally. For me, the price and the form factor and you know what it takes to dial in those sounds and create new profiles and all of that is much harder. There's much more of a learning curve with that. You have to either buy other profiles or you have to profile your own amps. There's just a lot more to it to get all of that stuff sorted out. All right, so now for the surprise. There's a link in the description below that takes you to my website where you can download a free Matchless Versus file. In that file, you will find a couple of Kemper profiles if you're a Kemper user, and you will find a free HX Stomp preset and an IR. Enjoy. As always, thanks for watching this video. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you out there.